Hey, what's going on, everyone? Good afternoon, and welcome to Time's Up Fantasy Sports Talk. I am your host, the one and only Waiver Wire Queen. Before we get started with today's episode, hit that subscribe button and follow me for more. I'm going to get you right and keep you current with your fantasy basketball. I know I may not be doing great in my league, but that doesn't mean I cannot give you the advice to help you win your league. And then also, I'm going to give you everything I know and how to prepare for the upcoming fantasy football season. I know you're saying, well, it's off season. Well, if you are in a dynasty league, it does not stop after the Super Bowl. And plus, I'm going to get you right and make sure you're current with all of the latest sports news, because how can you play fantasy sports if you have no clue what's going on currently in sports? All right, so let's jump right into it. Okay, so today's episode, we're going to talk about fantasy duds in fantasy basketball. I have three players who are not performing up to expectations, and then you got to think of, well, what were the expectations for these players? And that comes with doing your research and knowing what situation they are in, that they're currently in. Okay, let's just jump right into it. This player, Hassan Whiteside, is my top fantasy dud in fantasy basketball, and it has a lot to do with location. He definitely has the talent. His current situation with the Sacramento Kings is just not ideal for him to produce what he was producing previously. I mean, you think of a center. You're going to start a center who's averaging 15 points and 13 rebounds, okay? Because that's going to produce you close to maybe 30 fantasy points, depending on how your league is set up. Okay, so that's what Hassan Whiteside averaged in Portland last season. He averaged 15 points, 13 rebounds. That is ideal for a starting center. Season before that, he averaged 12 points and 11 rebounds in Miami. That kind of went down. Previous seasons, he was averaging more points and rebounds. Okay, so currently this season in Sacramento, he is only averaging 7 points and about 5 rebounds per game. And he's really not getting the minutes because they have Holmes. That's their guy. Okay, so with Whiteside, he is giving you about between 15 and 16 fantasy points per game. I'm going to lean more on the in between 15 and a half fantasy points per game because he's not getting the minutes. And you got to just understand and realize he's just not producing. And it's not because he doesn't have the talent, it's just the location. You're not getting the minutes, so you're not going to be able to produce. Some people may be desperate because depending on how your league is set up, you may not have a choice but to slot Whiteside in there, because when you look at the wire, it's just bare. There are no free agents available. Check out my next episode and you'll see a few players I think you should pick up, which will help you for cases like this when you are looking on the wire and you see Hassan Whiteside. Now, why he is the top dud? Because you got to think about where he was drafted. He was drafted higher than what he is producing. And honestly, he should have gone undrafted. But at the time, you're thinking, oh, he's going to produce, he's going to perform. And then what happens? He doesn't. So you drafted him higher, probably drafted him over someone like Holmes. And then, oops, well, you didn't do your homework, or you just thought that he was going to be the guy in Sacramento, and he's not the guy in Sacramento. And you're wishing, damn, I wish he was still in Portland playing, and he would probably be producing that 15 points, 13 rebounds, but that is all done with this season. It's just not working, and he's not producing like you wanted him to produce. And so he is my top fantasy dud, and he's droppable. You can drop him if you have enough solid players on your bench. There are players out there. If you watch my previous episode, check it up, hit it right, click right on the top and watch that episode, and you'll see some centers that you can pick up off the wire and utilize them who are better options than Whiteside. All right, let's move right along, guys. Okay, yeah, hear that noise. It's a lot going on here in Texas. I know you guys are wondering why the hell is she in her house with a sweatshirt on, and a hat. Okay, guys, it's a damn snowstorm or blizzard or whatever they want to call it out in Texas, and we have no power. So yes, I'm connected to my laptop, no power, and I'm just going with it. So yeah, it is what it is. I know people are saying, well, girl, you from New York, so you should be used to this weather. I I don't know how anyone can get used to 4 degrees. I don't care where you're at. But anyways, let's move right along and get right back into it. My second player who is a fantasy dud this season is Ricky Rubio. Okay, and now I know what you're saying. You're like, kid, well, come on now, Waiver Wire Queen. You recommended we pick him up a few days ago. That is correct. I do recommend you pick him up because D'Angelo Russell is hurt, and who is starting? Ricky Rubio is starting. So you can get away with right now and slotting him in there. He's going to get you 20 fantasy points, which is ideal if, say, you had D'Angelo Russell and you are having to pick up Rubio. You got to think. It's all about opportunity and being informed and staying in tune with what's going on in the fantasy world, as well as current NBA news. If you had Russell, you knew that, okay, he's having some issues with his leg, and you may need to pick Rubio up because that means Rubio is going to get his minutes. Okay, so Rubio has always been a solid fantasy option because he's going to at least give you 10 points, maybe 8 to 9 assists a game, which is ideal. Not your starting point guard in fantasy, but definitely someone you can slot in when one of your guys are either hurt or just doesn't have a game schedule. Okay, well, Rubio was traded from Phoenix to the Timberwolves, which we should have known that, okay, what is their plan for him? You have D'Angelo Russell, so there can't be much of a plan for Rubio. Well, some of us drafted him still. I actually drafted him, and he's on my bench, and I was going to drop him, and then I just held on to him, and then whoop, able to slot him in there because I have so many injuries. He is giving you production right now, so you got to use that opportunity. However, for where most people drafted him, he's not producing. He's averaging 6.4 points, 6.2 assists, which the assists is good. So if you are in a head-to-head categories, you may be able to work with that 6.5 assists per game, which is ideal and good. However, he wasn't playing heavy minutes prior to Russell getting hurt. And then you got to look at previous seasons. Previous seasons, he's averaged 13 points, 8 to 9 assists. So that production is down right now. He's giving you 19 fantasy points, which is helpful if you are without Russell or if you are without any other players. McCollum is out. I mean, there are players that are out and you need their production. When you are picking someone up off of the wire in fantasy basketball, you got to be I can't even talk straight. You got to be realistic about the expectations of how many points you expect out of that player. You're not going to get 40 points out of a player you pick up in free agency in fantasy basketball. You may be able to get away with that in fantasy football, not 40, but in fantasy football terms, you can pick up a player off of the wire who's going to give you 15, maybe 20 points, and they turn out to be a hot ad and turn out to be a player that you can ride the season. It does not necessarily work like that in fantasy basketball all the time, especially at this stage in the season. You probably missed out on those hot players that are going to produce for you throughout the season. Now you're just looking for players to help when your players are injured, especially this season with the health and safety protocols due to COVID. You're going to see players out. It's just going to happen. And they're going to be out for multiple games, so you just have to do what you have to do out here in the fantasy basketball world and just roll with it. I have several injuries in all of my leagues, and I'm getting my butt whipped weekly and getting my butt whipped. It is no question. And it is what it is. I'm going to make a comeback, y'all. I promise. However, right now, Ricky Rubio for the whole season, long-term fantasy, once Russell comes back, his value is going to go back down, and he's considered a fantasy dud in my book. But right now, you can pick him up and start him. He's going to give you at least 20 fantasy points, which you can use, especially if there isn't anyone out there and you have a lot of injuries. You're going to need points. And when you're in a head-to-head points, when you're in head-to-head total points, you need whatever points you can. You cannot afford to just say, well, oh, okay, my guy's hurt, and so I'm just going to leave that spot open. No, you need those points. So Ricky Rubio's 20 points is going to help you. For instance, I was winning in this week against someone, and I forgot one. I thought I set my lineups and then left my guy on the bench. So I was still up and still projected to win. But then I had a player just bomb for me. They came out and they stunk it up. And I ended up losing by like maybe 10, 11 points. So if you had somebody like a Ricky Rubio who gave 20, then there you go. So every point counts. Yeah, you may have that one player that come out and stink it up, but you don't want to ever go into a day of games and say, well, oh, I am just not going to play anyone. I'm not going to pick anyone up. No, if there is a guy like a Ricky Rubio out there, you pick him up and you take his 20 points and help build towards your end of the week head-to-head total points so you can win. It may be that close, so you need all the points you can get. All right, y'all. I apologize for the sirens. Like I said, it's crazy out here right now. I can't use my regular setup because I don't have the power, but I'm using this setup just to get you guys right. Anyways, let's talk about my third and final fantasy dud. I mean, he's giving you 22 fantasy points, which is fine. You probably may have drafted him to start. I wouldn't have drafted him to start. Maybe come off my bench as a spot starter, which is fine. You can get away with that. Eric Bledsoe. Okay, so he was traded from the Bucks to the Pelicans, and you should have known right there that it was just going to be different. I mean, it's the whole setup there is just weird in regards to their lineups and how they're utilizing him. And so his production is down. He's still giving 22 fantasy points. The last 2 games, he's had 6 points and 16 points. So it's like, it's a crapshoot with him. It's like, you just don't know. You don't know what you're going to get. You may get a day 6 points, which isn't many points in fantasy world, or he may give you 16, which is okay, but how often is he going to give you that 16? All right. You just don't know. You just don't know. Well, this season he is averaging 13 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Last season, it was about 14.5, 14.9 points, and about 4.5 rebounds per game. So that production is down. And if you drafted him high, and I don't mean high like the first 2 or 3 rounds, when you drafted him, the expectations should have been, this is someone who I am going to draft to come off my bench as a spot starter, not someone that you are expecting to produce 30 plus every night for you. No, you should have drafted LaMelo Ball for something like that, because that is what he is doing. However, Eric Bledsoe is still fantasy dud because you probably drafted him higher than where you should have, with the expectations of he is going to give me 25, maybe 30. That was unrealistic, and you probably shouldn't have thought like that. And you should have just waited and drafted him later. But also, you got to think of the setup of the league you are in. I am in a league where there are too many teams and there are too many starters and too many bench slots. So you're probably on the wire looking like, okay, who can I pick up? You're looking at players that you've never heard of. So if you're in a league like that, Eric Bledsoe is going to work for you. Now, if you're in a league where the setup is maybe 10 teams and your bench players are maybe 5, maybe 6 bench slots, and then your starters are maybe 6, maybe 7, somewhere within that range, you're probably going to find Eric Bledsoe on the wire. You know, it just really depends on setup as far as how deep you're going to have to go into that free agency to find a player. You know, a lot of leagues, you're going to be looking at players you just never heard of. And you should know them because you got to do your homework. You got to do your homework. But nonetheless, y'all, that's all for this episode. I hope everyone is staying safe, especially with all of this crazy weather that's going on. Especially out here in Texas, it's crazy. It's 4 degrees. I asked for snow, and I got snow, ice, sleet, negative temps, no power, but it is what it is. I'm still bringing you guys the the best fantasy sports show in the universe. All right. Well, y'all do me a favor. Let me know what y'all think. Who do y'all think has been a disappointment this year in fantasy? From the guys I'm talking about, and from maybe some second tier stars, not superstars, but second tier players who are considered stars or the go to guy on their team. Let me know what y'all think. Hit that subscribe button and follow Waiver Wire Queen for more. And make sure your notifications are turned on so you can stay current and check out my videos. Do me a favor and follow me on Facebook and IG at Dream Elite Strive for Excellence. And that is excellence with an X, like the BX. And also hit me up on Facebook at Waiver Wire Queen. Y'all be safe, stay warm, and have a great evening. Peace.